At SCVO, in our digital team, we're there to help the charity sector make sense of digital and technology. Often very small charities find it hard to get a start with new technology. Obviously, if you were to ask me about two years ago, do you need an AI strategy or a policy, I would have said, don't worry about it. Just get handy with Excel, that'll probably do what you need to do. But this has changed, obviously, very recently in terms of tools reaching people much more quickly than people expected. They're relatively easy to use, and they're becoming embedded in software that we're using already. So earlier this year, we started thinking a lot about this, trying to gather together reliable information. And one of the things that we did with that was reached out to experts, so people like Steph and Gina, who are in organizations that have been working on this for a long time already. So what we're looking to do with our conversation today is bring you to expertise that's been there for a while and get to a really good conversation about what this all might mean for our sector. So what I'll do is I'll quickly introduce our panelists from your left, audience left. We've got Steph Wright from the Scottish AI Alliance. We've got Tanya Duarte from We and AI. And we've got Gina Helfrich from the Edinburgh Futures Institute. And what I'll do just to get our speakers going is to get them to talk really briefly about their organisation, what you're up to, and that'll just kind of give a bit of context, and then we'll go into a few questions that we've received in advance. So are you happy to kick off, Steph?
I'll start. Hello, everyone. Didn't realize my mic was on earlier when I was clearing my throat. Apologies, Kerry. It wasn't like anything. But anyway, yes, hello, everyone. I'm Steph Wright. I'm the head of the Scottish AI Alliance. Hopefully, you've heard of us in some way, but if not, we're the body tasked with the delivery of Scotland's national AI strategy. Yes, Scotland has a national AI strategy. 6 months before the UK one, just to note. But yes, so it was launched at the end of March 2021. And it highlighted a vision, it set out a vision for Scotland to become a leader in the development and use of trustworthy, ethical, and inclusive AI. And those three values are pretty much, you know, the lens through which we do everything we do. It was a 5-year vision. We're in delivery year 3 now. So the Scottish AI Alliance is, like I said, the body delivering on that. It is actually quite a unique kind of setup. We're not a legal entity in our own right. However, we are a partnership between the Data Lab, which is Scotland's National Innovation Centre for Data and AI, and the Scottish Government. So we're actually uniquely a hybrid team to kind of, you know, capture the best of both worlds in terms of delivering on the strategy. Like I said, you know, trustworthy, ethical, inclusive pretty much informs everything we do. We truly believe that AI can transform our lives for the better, but it needs to be for all and not the few. And that's something we're really, really passionate about. And a large part of what we do is around public and communities engagement, because ultimately we want all the people of Scotland to be part of Scotland's AI future. So, so that's me.
Thanks. So yeah, I'm Tanya Duarte. I run We and AI, which is a UK non-profit, primarily volunteer-led organisation. And we set up about 3.5 years ago, feeling that there needed to be greater public involvement in decision-making around AI, and most importantly, a greater diversity of people involved in decision-making, but also in the data, in the workforce around AI. And a barrier we saw to that was that not enough people understood enough about AI. So we focus on AI literacy, but by that we don't mean skills, we mean encouraging, enabling, empowering critical thinking about AI for the purposes of social inclusion, of being able to join the conversation. And through that journey, we've identified a lot of barriers because actually we're not starting from ground zero. There are so many myths and misconceptions and hype and false narratives around AI that it can be very difficult for people to actually know how and what and why to get involved and have their voice heard. The kind of activities we do are, at the moment, running workshops on deepfakes and synthetic media for, well, I say we're running, it's actually the young people themselves, for young people, 14 to 19-year-olds, and you know these are people growing up with in a world where they can't believe what they see anymore. And also working on kind of syllabuses. Very privileged to work with the Scottish AI Alliance on a wonderful course, Living with AI, that is meant for everybody to learn about AI. And we also run the Better Images of AI project, which creates better visual representations, so we're not all thinking about white robots all the time.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Gina Helfrich. I'm with the Centre for Technomoral Futures, which is part of University of Edinburgh's Futures Institute. The mission of the Centre for Technomoral Futures is to develop new modes of research, education, and engagement that will lead to just innovation and sustainable futures where everyone can flourish. We're very focused on tackling problems in society that involve technology with interdisciplinary forms of expertise. So there's a real emphasis at Centre for Technomoral Futures that technical expertise alone cannot solve the problems that we're facing, and we need many more types of expertise, social, political, moral, you name it. So it's gonna take all of us together, combining these different areas to deal with some of these major challenges that we're facing.
Great. Thank you all so much for joining us. What we're aiming to do is a bit of a freewheeling, not totally freewheeling, but a loose conversation based on questions. Some of you will have sent questions in advance, so thank you for doing that. I'll try and keep to those and make sure we cover them. But what we'd like to do is cover a few themes and really aim to get on a path that's steering well clear of the hype, probably not getting into the nitty-gritty details of how AI works. That's available on digital platforms that we offer on our website, if you'd like to look at it, and Living with AI as well. What we're looking to do is to maybe get to a bit of a reflective space. Think about this as the voluntary sector coming together. So think about issues like whose voice, whose values, whose vulnerabilities are coming to the fore in these discussions. So we'll go through our questions and hopefully cover some interesting areas. So I think the first one I wanted to pick up with was, obviously, if you're reading the news, last week some people were in a room in Bletchley Park. They said some things about AI. And I wonder, maybe for the whole panel, do you feel the right people were in the room? And if they weren't, how do we respond to that? So who would like to kick off with that one?
I'll kick off because I think we can all agree on this. Absolutely not the right people in the room. And no, I mean, it was 100 people in a room. And although they listed the organizations that were there, they didn't list the individuals that were there. So you actually kind of have no idea exactly, the diversity of the representation there. And they lumped academia with civil society in the list. And you're like, so you're just trying to work out, so which one is civil society? And yeah, I don't, if it really is meant to have global impact, more voices need to be there. But I think Tanya can probably touch on this because she was doing on stuff for the AI fringe. But yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's a really interesting point, this kind of lumping together of civil society and academia and think tanks. And on the information about the AI Safety Summit, it did say, civil society has been invited, but it's possibly not the civil society that many people in this room would consider to be civil society. And this also carried through into the AI Fringe, which was set up to try and fill that gap by only 100 people, clearly more conversations need to be had. But even within that, the kind of official fringe, although there were lots of fringes to fringes to fringes, but even within that, the kind of idea of who can come and talk about AI is very much academia. Now, we love academia, and I'm sitting next to academia, but it becomes a question of the same people talking, having the same conversations with each other about other people. And about what other people, might need. Now, they may have researched it very well, but what we need to do is get those voices into the room. So I think definitions of civil society are really interesting. I think I live in London. The London definition is very much about people, communities and voluntary sector coming together to, make their world a better place, their communities a better place. And you can see that's quite far away from what is considered to be people who are allowed to be experts. So I think that's a really good one for people in the voluntary sector to challenge and say, you are the ones that know what's actually what the impacts are, what's going on, what the needs are, and really push to get that voice heard.
Yes, all of the above. It's hard to add on. My impression is that by and large, the people at the meeting were the rich and the powerful, I mean, to be perfectly honest. And the rich and the powerful are not the people who are experiencing the most immediate harms from AI. So to have a meeting that is really lacking in the people who are being most directly affected, obviously is very problematic.
And to add to that, the focus was on frontier AI.
I beg you not to adopt that terminology.
and the truth is, even amongst the experts, no one has an agreement. What do they mean by frontier AI, right? Like, I mean, one take is it's AI that doesn't exist yet. And it's like, yeah, let's regulate that. That's great. Yeah, I mean, I said on a panel last week, like, was the focus correct, on frontier AI, or should it be AI now? And I was like, absolutely, it should be AI now, because if we can't regulate AI now, what chance have we got to regulate AI that doesn't exist yet? So anyway, sorry, rant over.
I'm going to have to pick up on the frontier word as well. So we do a lot of work on the language that is used to describe AI and how that is used to kind of embed often false impressions. And the whole word frontier is, quite offensive to some people. It's quite kind of colonial. It's this idea of like, trying to gain back. And so...
And to conquer.
To conquer,
Yeah.
and it kind of shows from where that idea has come.
Yes.
And again, that's about exploitation and conquering, and the fact that's what this was about. I would say it started as a foundation task force.
It's now
the frontier, and
yeah.
now it's gone to the AI Safety Institute. So it's changed 3 times in about six months.
Okay, so I mean, I guess that's good to remind ourselves of. Our disclaimer is we're not going to spend a lot of time today talking about stuff that doesn't exist yet. So maybe, and it sounds kind of obvious to say it, but why is it important to focus on stuff that does exist? Why is that a more pressing risk than things that we maybe read about in the headlines? So why is that a good area of focus in terms of things that exist?
Someone else can go first.
Oh man, what a great question. It feels intuitive to me, like if I'm facing an actual real problem, it's going to just occupy more of my attention than a hypothetical problem that I might have.
Yeah.
It feels really basic to me on that level.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I've often thought is if only climate change had existential risks PR team, because the kind of hype around existential risk is phenomenal. And obviously, thinking about the destruction of the human race, whereas we have climate change, which AI is contributing to. Yes, there are projects that are set up to think about energy optimization, to think about how we can tackle climate change, but not enough people are aware of the huge climate impact that these large models, every query to ChatGPT is like throwing I think half a litre of clean water on the phone. So this whole kind of idea of like, we should all be, experimenting and testing and the rest of it, which we all in this room have done, and it's great, but not many people understand the kind of implications. So I think if we are concerned about, the really big risks, that's one that we could start having more conversations about.
A lot of times now when we say AI, really people are referring to generative AI.
Yeah, which is
That's like another difficulty that we're kind of facing at the moment. So I think, Tanya covered it really well in my opinion, in terms of, how voluntary organizations can take advantage of generative AI. So just what are opportunities where being able to like make an image really quick could be helpful to you, or generate some text really quick, those are basically the context that you can think about, oh yeah, how could I make better use of this? And I'm sure that there are many ways that absolutely you can. And then when we think about other forms of AI, there also have been many really fascinating and cool examples of how it's being used. For example, there's like indigenous communities who have used AI to basically try to help preserve endangered languages. And what I think part of what is so exciting and cool about it is that the power of the tools is all really in the hands of the people. So it's not borrowing something that a huge organization made, but it's making it themselves with their data, and they are the ones who control it. So that community, I can't remember the exact language, I apologize, but that community
New Zealand, the Maori.
Is in New England. Okay,
yeah.
So they basically will collectively decide who gets to use this tool. That's basically a chatbot that's been made on the basis of their data. And
it's also about recreating, because there's fewer and fewer speakers,
right.
native speakers of it, and they're using AI to recreate it to help people learn it again. Well, New Zealand's one of the examples. I imagine there might be other ones.
I'm sure there are others.
But New Zealand's was a big one.
So that's really great. And then you kind of, it's like any place that you think statistical probability could be helpful, which is really what AI is. Yes. Is where there have been really interesting kind of interventions made. Like if we're trying to stop poachers in a very large area, then what we can do is use AI to analyze like some satellite data that will help us say, well, there's a greater probability that if you look here, you're going to catch those poachers than having to kind of like monitor this huge space, right? So things like that, just really cool stuff. There's my colleagues at the Bay Centre at University of Edinburgh have an AI accelerator program for entrepreneurs, so it's not quite the same thing. But there is a company there based in Africa that's using AI to analyze soil quality and pests for African farmers, right? So those are ways that are like really going to improve quality of life for those folks who otherwise, could have a crop entirely decimated by a pest or wouldn't know that they need to add certain things to make sure that their soil quality is good. So there are a lot of like really neat ways that AI is being used that are exciting and not as much of a downer as some of the things we've been talking about.
But also bear in mind that there's a lot of uses that aren't AI. It is data science in essence.
Yeah.
And you can say AI is fancy data science. And the statistical probabilities and stuff, predicting things, spotting patterns and things. You could analyze, say, service take up across your geographical area and stuff, and you could identify, oh, hold on a minute, why does this neighborhood not use our service, and stuff like that. I think it gives you insights, but all these need data, and I have to remember that. I mean, generative AI is, you don't need your own data, but most other uses of AI, you need data.
I think it was a really good point that we end up talking about generative AI a lot because of what's happened the last year and the kind of breakthroughs. But actually, there have been charities that have been at the forefront of using, AI for some really great disability tech applications for years that have been conflated. And I think if you look, I did a search on LinkedIn for generative AI and doing an event on generative AI and disability tech. And it listed 5 uses of AI, and none of them were generative. They were all existing. So it's really, really good to remember that there have already been, we've been using things. I mean, good examples of things like Be My Eyes, which uses computer vision to help, blind people navigate rooms by, telling them what's around them. I mean, there are some really great use cases.
And giving people their voice back as well, using AI. That's another option.
And I think that it tends to be a little bit like generative AI it can be really useful for kind of internal efficiencies for helping, kind of the operations of a charity, very broad, kind of rule of thumb. And then there are other, other AI applications that have been around for years that are often about how you serve the community, how you help, the people within communities.
Yeah.
I think Tanya touched on a really good point there. Like, everyone's talking about generative AI here and ignores the fact that AI has been around for a very long time, and AI is, and also most important, AI isn't one thing, and it gets talked about as if AI is a term, it's a panacea of, it's a single technology, but it's actually many technologies. And a lot of them have been around for a very long time and are being used in many, many, many different contexts. It's just right now, everyone wants to talk about generative AI because in essence, generative AI made AI real for a lot of people that would have otherwise not really connected with the concept of AI, and in a way that's really good, because I think before, I remember in years past people going, oh, can you be at this exhibition? Do you have anything to show? Code? So I think, it's just remember, AI isn't one thing.
Thank you. I'm going to maybe pick up a very quick point about data now and then give you a kind of wrap-up type question, if that's all right, because we're getting near the end. So the quick data one is, I think in the voluntary sector, a particular challenge we have because of the scale that organizations work at is instead of data lochs, we have data puddles where an organization will have a small data set that has a lot of rich insight in it, but maybe not the capacity to go and look in the pond or, draw out more systematic analysis from it. And I wondered if you think, are any of the new tools that we're seeing likely to give opportunities there, or is it still a case of just go back and make sure your data is well structured and up to date and accurate and that kind of thing?
Ooh,
to give it maybe a concrete example, I'm imagining a funder, for example, might have got a folder somewhere that has hundreds of narrative reports from grantees, and historically they would have used staff time to go through and look through what were the learning points from this, what were the risks and that kind of thing. Do you think any recent tools might help with that kind of scenario?
Well, I guess an AI model can technically ingest all that data and produce insights from it. But I guess with anything, it's about the quality of the data as well. Even if you have a small data set, but if it's a rich data set that is full of, quality data points, it's not entirely useless. There can be stuff that can be done from it, but it really, I think, depends on what you want to do with it and what you want to get out of it.
Yeah. And I think it also being really clear, you talked about the quality of the data set, and we haven't talked much about kind of bias issues in AI, but that there are huge issues, and again it's the people that are most underrepresented in data or have historic kind of views that have crept into the data that are most at risk, the most vulnerable people, and I think that I guess, sorry to go cautionary again, but that is something to really consider in any use is really examining the data sets. And people are working on kind of synthetic data to try and, so that's kind of, reproducing data, and there's a lot of talk about this being, this being a way forward. But it still comes down to also the way the question is asked as to how you use the data. So even if you debias your, algorithms, you use synthetic data, et cetera, that there's still always those risks. We've seen, back to generative AI and image generation, the bias in some of those images, you put in, black doctor treating white children, and it actually cannot create that image. It gives you white doctors treating black children over and over again. It might put a giraffe in the background, but it can't do it. I come from Mexico originally, and it will picture me wearing a sombrero because it can't. So I think with any uses, I think there are so many potential uses. Anything, as you said, looking at kind of analysing patterns, is always just being very careful about what biases might be there.
Yeah, because there's so much hype right now, I think it's really tempting to be like, oh yeah, what could we use AI for? But it might not really help, right? It's sort of like, well, what problems are you actually facing? If you have like a really fantastic data set, then start with like, what questions are you hoping to ask that you want to learn from that data set about? And the way that you arrive at those answers might have nothing to do with AI.
And what does the answer do?
Yeah.
You know, like for your organization, if you get an answer from it, like what are you going to do with it? What does it mean for your users, for your company?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, we're right on time now, so I'm going to see if we can do a very brief wrap up. It's been a really interesting discussion. I hope not too gloomy. I think it's been good to have that kind of caution and perspective there. My question for you, and it's quite a big one, so I'm going to offer my quick thought to give you a bit of lead-in time, is we're at the gathering, it's 5 years' time, it's 2028, and it looks like the voluntary sector has used AI responsibly. It's working for everybody. It's a positive thing. What does that look like? What's happening? While you're thinking, I suppose for me, I think the points are about we've really got to grips with the issues around bias and risk. Even the smallest organizations are able to use it well. Probably what we're seeing is organizations can deal with a lot of routine stuff very efficiently, and that's allowed them to use their resource on the harder stuff. I wonder if you had any thoughts about what 2028 might look like if we know if we've done the right thing with AI.
5 years is a long time in technology. I don't know. I mean, you know, on a very basic level, it would be great if in 5 years' time, the voluntary sector has been able to use technologies like AI to reduce the pressure on the sector and to provide better services and essentially to improve the lives of the people that you reach. And that is ultimately what technology is for, right? It's here to make our lives better. And I really hope that in 5 years' time that would be the case. But like I said, no one might be talking about like AI in 5 years. You never know what the next thing is, right? You know, a few years ago it was, you know, crypto. It was Web3, and you know, and all this literally changes in like 12 months or less, you know. And yeah, I mean, I guess there's that. You know, if we can, I like to think that technology has actually, you know, we've embraced technology in such a way that it's actually made, like, you know, for lack of a better word, like Scotland a better country. I know that sounds really cheesy, but that is what we're aiming for, and that's what technology should be helping us to do.
I agree that 5 years, I'm struggling. I struggle to think about next month and what
Go for 2 years if you want.
What OpenAI are going to do tomorrow, you know. But what I would say is that when we talk about AI, what we're actually talking about a lot of the time is power, and that doesn't change. Who's behind the power, who holds the power, who leverages it, who doesn't, and actually that's what I want to see change on. And so my kind of vision would be of you know, civil society, you know, grassroots coming together, taking the opportunity of these tools, but also, you know, getting a voice on what kind of future that we want with AI, and not just being at the mercy of the kind of the billionaires' agendas. And so yeah, that's my vision.
Yeah, I love those visions. I agree. I think, you know, to the extent that AI in many ways is a tool to increase efficiency, then I hope that voluntary sector organizations are able to take full advantage. You know, like all of the sort of productivity gains that we got from going to typewriters to word processors to, you know, how you can be writing an email and it's like, oh, did you mean to complete the sentence this way? You're like, yes, I did. Thank you very much. You know, like, I got those 2 seconds back. Like, I hope that those efficiencies allow people in voluntary organizations to use their time where they can be the most impactful, right? So taking maybe some of the drudgery away and allowing that to happen more quickly as a result of using technological tools. But yeah, so that people can focus on the things where their expertise is most needed and most valuable.
Great. Thank you very much. It's been a great discussion. It could go on much longer, but I think we probably need to finish. So thank you so much to our panel for bringing their expertise and insight. Thank you to all of you for listening, and I hope you find it informative. So that's us for today. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.